Halima walked slowly along the noisy road. Cars honked, motorbikes rushed by, and people moved quickly, each minding their own business. She had no home to return to, no food waiting for her, and no family calling her name. She carried only a small bottle of water and a piece of torn cloth she used as her cover at night. The city was full of life, but for her, every day was a struggle. She lived by watching, waiting, and helping where she could. On this hot afternoon, as the sun burned above, she noticed something unusual. A man in a fine suit stumbled near the roadside. At first, she thought he was just tired, but then he fell to the ground. People glanced at him but quickly looked away. Some shook their heads, others hurried past, and a few even crossed to the other side of the street. In the middle of the busy city, the man lay helpless, yet nobody stopped to help. Halima's heart beat fast. She was just a poor girl, and she knew many people ignored her because of her clothes and her smell. But she could not stand by and watch a man suffer. She rushed forward, her bare feet slapping against the hot ground. She bent down beside him and saw sweat covering his face. His eyes were half closed, and his breathing was heavy. He looked weak, as if his strength was leaving him. Halima did not think twice. She pulled out her small bottle of water. It was all she had for the day, but she lifted his head gently and poured some into his mouth. The man coughed a little, but then he swallowed. She tore a piece of her cloth and fanned him, trying to give him some air under the hot sun. She shaded his face with her own body and whispered, "You will be okay, sir. Please stay with me." The people around still did not stop. Some even muttered, "Leave him. Maybe he drank too much." Others said, "It is not our problem." But Halima refused to move away. She stayed by his side, her hands shaking but firm. She pressed his hands softly as if to remind him that someone cared. Minutes felt like hours. Halima looked around desperately, hoping someone would help. She tried calling out, "Please, someone help me. He is not well." But most people ignored her voice. She felt a sting in her chest, not only for the man but for the way the world had grown cold. Still, she did not give up. She remembered the words her mother once told her before she died, "Even if you have nothing, give kindness. Kindness is a treasure." Halima held on to that treasure now. She wiped the sweat from the man's face with her cloth. She whispered to him, "You will not die here. I will not let you." Her own stomach was empty, her body was tired, but her spirit was strong. She would not leave him alone like everyone else did. The man's hand twitched weakly, as if trying to reach out. His lips moved, but no words came. Halima leaned closer, urging him to rest. She saw fear in his eyes, but also a silent plea. She pressed his hand again and said softly, "You are safe. I am here." As the sun grew hotter, Halima felt the ground burn her feet, but she stayed. A taxi slowed down near them. The driver rolled down his window and asked, "What is happening here?" Halima begged him, "Please, sir, help me take him to a clinic. He needs care. He will die if we leave him here." The driver hesitated. He looked at the man's expensive clothes, then at Halima's ragged dress. At first, he did not want to get involved. But when he saw the determination in Halima's eyes, he sighed and stepped out. "Fine," he said, "let us take him quickly." Halima helped lift the man into the car. Her hands trembled, but she did not let go. She sat beside him, holding his hand the entire way. She whispered prayers, the only thing she knew to offer beyond her small water and torn cloth. She asked God to keep the man alive, even though she did not know his name, even though he was a stranger. At the clinic, the doctors rushed to his side. They checked his pulse, gave him oxygen, and moved quickly to save him. One nurse asked Halima, "Are you related to him?" Halima shook her head. "No," she said, "I just found him on the road. Please help him." The nurse nodded and told her, "He is very lucky you brought him here on time. A few more minutes, and it might have been too late." Halima sat on the hard bench outside, tired but relieved. She had nothing left, her water was gone, her cloth torn, and her little money spent on the taxi. Yet her heart felt light. She had done what was right. She did not wait for thanks, because she did not expect any. To her, the man's breath was enough reward. As night began to fall, Halima quietly slipped away. She walked back to her corner of the street where she usually slept. She wrapped the remaining piece of cloth around herself and looked at the stars above. Her stomach ached with hunger, but her heart was at peace. Somewhere inside that clinic, a man was alive because she refused to look away. She whispered again to herself, "Kindness is a treasure," and closed her eyes, never knowing that the man she had saved was not just anyone, but one of the richest men in the city. Halima's hands shook as she held the man's arm. Cars kept rushing by, and many people stared but kept walking. She cried out to a taxi driver, waving her arms, "Please, sir, stop. Help us." At first, the driver frowned. He looked at Halima's dirty clothes and the weak man on the ground. He thought it would be trouble. But Halima's voice cracked with desperation, and tears filled her eyes. Finally, the driver sighed and pulled over. Halima begged him, "Please, sir, he will die here if we do nothing. I don't have much, but take this." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a few crumpled coins, the little money she had saved for bread. She held it out with shaking fingers. The driver hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Get him in," he said. With all her strength, Halima helped lift the man into the back seat. His breathing was shallow, his skin cold. Halima climbed in beside him, holding his hand tightly. The taxi sped toward the clinic, weaving through traffic. Every bump made her heart jump. She whispered prayers again and again. "God, please, let him live. Don't take him now." At the clinic, the driver honked loudly, and nurses rushed out with a stretcher. They lifted the man quickly and carried him inside. A doctor looked at Halima and asked, "Where did you find him?" She answered, "On the roadside. He collapsed. Please, save him." The doctors worked fast. They gave him oxygen, checked his pulse, and set up drips. Halima stood near the door, clutching her torn cloth, afraid to move closer. She watched as they fought to bring him back. After what felt like hours, one of the nurses finally turned to her and said, "He will be fine. He survived because you acted quickly. If you had waited, it would have been too late." Halima's knees weakened with relief. She sat on the floor, covering her face with her hands. She whispered, "Thank you, God," over and over. Her body was tired, her stomach empty, but her heart was calm. She had done the right thing. But Halima was not the kind of girl who waited for praise. She knew her place in the world. People often pushed her away because she was homeless. She feared that once the man woke up, no one would want her around. Quietly, she stood up. She looked once more through the glass window, where the man lay sleeping on the hospital bed. His chest rose and fell slowly, proof that life had returned to him. That was enough for her. Without a word, she walked out of the clinic. The night air was cool, and the streets were noisy again. She hugged herself with her small cloth and went back to her corner on the roadside. She had no bed, no roof, but in her heart, she carried peace. She whispered, "At least someone is alive tonight." Inside the clinic, the man opened his eyes hours later. His body was weak, but he could breathe again. The first thing he asked was, "Where is the girl who saved me?" The nurses looked at each other. One said, "She left. She didn't wait for anything." The man frowned. His name was Chief Tunde. People in the city knew him as one of the richest men, though few had ever seen him in such a helpless state. He could buy cars, houses, and lands, but at that moment, he wanted only one thing, to find the girl who had saved his life. "Who was she?" he asked again. The nurse replied softly, "A homeless girl. She gave up her water and even her money to bring you here. Without her, you would not be alive now." Chief Tunde's heart sank. He thought of all the times he had walked past beggars on the street without looking at them. He thought of the way people dismissed the poor as if they were invisible. Yet it was one of them, a girl with nothing, who had given him life again. He turned his head toward the window and whispered, "I must find her." Chief Tunde left the clinic with a new fire in his heart. He was alive, but his thoughts never left the nameless girl who had saved him. He asked the taxi driver, the nurses, even people on the street. Most shook their heads. Some said, "There are many poor girls like that here. How will you find just one?" But Tunde was not ready to give up. His heart told him he owed her more than words. For many nights, he sent his driver to circle the busy markets and corners where the poor gathered. He gave food to some, hoping one of them might know. Some pointed toward the old bus station, others spoke of a girl who sang sometimes at night when children cried. Each clue made his search stronger. One evening, as the sun was setting, Tunde walked through a narrow street filled with broken stalls and old shelters. His guards wanted to keep him safe, but he waved them back. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. There, under a broken shelter made of wood and metal sheets, he saw her. Halima was sitting cross-legged on the bare ground. In her hand was a small piece of bread. Around her sat 3 children, younger than her, their eyes wide with hunger. She tore the bread carefully, giving each child a piece before taking a bite herself. Her smile was soft, and she patted the youngest on the head, whispering, Don't worry, little one. Tomorrow will be better. Tunde froze where he stood. His chest tightened. This was the same girl who had saved him. The girl people ignored, the girl some feared. She had nothing, no home, no food, no warm clothes. Yet, instead of keeping the bread for herself, she gave it away. He whispered to himself, this girl is richer in heart than many who sit in golden chairs. Halima noticed him at last. She looked up, surprised to see a tall man in fine clothes standing near the broken shelter. She thought he might be lost, or perhaps someone coming to chase them away. Quickly, she pulled the children closer to her side and asked softly, do you need something, sir? Tunde felt his throat tighten. He wanted to say everything, to tell her he was the man she had saved, to thank her, to promise her a new life. But in that moment, he could only look at her simple kindness. Finally, he stepped closer and said, I was looking for you. Halima blinked, confused. For me? Why? She asked. Tunde knelt on the dusty ground so he could be at her eye level. Because you saved my life, he said gently. That day, on the roadside, when no one came, you stayed. You gave your water, your last coins. Without you, I would not be here. Halima's eyes widened. She remembered the man she had helped, the one who collapsed in the street. She had left before he woke up. Now he was standing here, dressed in fine clothes, speaking to her with respect. She shook her head and whispered, I only did what was right. Anyone would have done the same. Tunde gave a sad smile. No. Many walked past me. But you stopped. You, a girl with nothing, gave me everything that mattered, life. The children beside her looked up at the man with curiosity. They did not understand his words, but they felt the weight of his respect for Halima. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Tunde reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package of food he had bought earlier. He handed it to the children. Their faces lit up with joy, but he kept his eyes on Halima. You shared your bread with others even when you were hungry, he said softly. You have more wealth in your heart than I have in all my houses and lands. Halima lowered her eyes, embarrassed by his praise. She had never been called rich before. She had only known hunger and struggle. To her, kindness was survival. But Chief Tunde knew in his heart that this meeting was no accident. The girl who had saved him was showing him lessons he had never learned from his fortune. She was showing him the true meaning of richness. As the stars began to appear above the city, Tunde made a promise to himself. He would not leave this girl in the broken shelter. Her heart was too bright to remain hidden in the dark corners of the city. He would change her life, and through her, perhaps change the lives of many others. And so, standing before Halima and the children, Chief Tunde whispered, this is only the beginning. Chief Tunde sat with Halima under the broken shelter. For the first time in many years, he sat on bare ground, with dust on his shoes and children's curious eyes watching him. The children whispered to each other, wondering why such a rich-looking man would sit with them. But Tunde did not care about his clothes or the stairs. He wanted to know who this girl truly was. Tell me, Halima, he said gently, how did you come to live here on the streets? Halima lowered her gaze. She was not used to people asking about her life, especially not a man dressed in fine clothes. Most people only called her names or accused her of being lazy. But Tunde's voice carried a calm respect that made her heart feel lighter. She spoke slowly, her words heavy with memories. I had parents once, she began. My father was a carpenter. My mother sold fruits at the market. We were poor, but we had each other. Then, one night, there was a fire in our house. My parents never came out. Her voice trembled, and she paused. The younger children leaned against her as if her pain was theirs too. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand and continued. I ran into the streets that night and never went back. I had no home, no family. I begged for food, sometimes went hungry for days. But then I saw other children, small ones, weaker than me. They cried at night, hungry and afraid. I could not leave them alone. So I shared what little I found. Sometimes a piece of bread, sometimes only words to make them smile. Tunde's chest tightened as he listened. Each word was like a mirror showing him the truth. He thought of his own big mansion with guards at the gates, the endless meals on golden plates, the clothes that filled his wardrobes. Yet here was a girl with nothing, who still found a way to care for others. Why did you not ask for help? Tunde asked softly. Halima shook her head. People do not listen to girls like me. Some call us thieves. Others call us cursed. I learned to survive on my own. But I never wanted to become hard. My mother always said, even in pain, choose kindness. I hold on to those words." Her eyes glistened as she finished speaking. The children beside her looked proud, as if they too believed her mother's words had become their shield in the cruel streets. Tunde felt a deep ache in his heart. He was a man who owned many businesses, who was praised in the newspapers, who shook hands with leaders and gave speeches at events. Yet, as he listened to Halima, he felt smaller than he had ever felt in his life. All his wealth seemed empty compared to the richness of this girl's heart. He took a deep breath and said, "Halima, I must tell you the truth." She looked at him curiously. "I am not just a man you found on the roadside. My name is Chief Tunde. I am a businessman. Many call me a billionaire." The words hung in the air like a heavy stone. The children's eyes widened, and even Halima looked unsure if she had heard him right. To her, billionaires belonged to another world, a world of tall buildings, flashing cars, and iron gates. But here he was, sitting in the dust beside her. "You?" she asked quietly, still unsure. "Yes," Tunde said with a small nod. "I have more money than I could ever spend. More houses than I could ever live in. But when I fell on that roadside, none of it saved me. It was you. A girl with nothing, who gave me everything." Halima's lips parted, but no words came out. She simply stared at him. "You saved my life," Tunde continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But more than that, you opened my eyes. You showed me that wealth is not measured in money. It is measured in kindness, in courage, in love for others. You have what I do not." Halima's eyes filled with tears. She had been called many things in her short life: witch, beggar, thief, but never had anyone said such words to her. Never had anyone called her rich in heart. The younger children looked between them, not understanding everything, but feeling the weight of the moment. One of the little boys tugged at Halima's arm and whispered, "Sister, is he telling the truth?" Halima nodded slowly, though her own mind was still trying to believe it. Tunde reached out and placed his hand gently over hers. "From today, you will never be alone again. I owe you more than I can ever repay. But I will try. You gave me back my life. Now, let me give you back yours." Halima blinked away her tears. "But why me?" she asked softly. "There are many people in the world. Why would you care about one homeless girl?" Tunde smiled faintly, his eyes warm. "Because the world changes one heart at a time. And tonight, mine was changed by you." The broken shelter around them seemed smaller now, too small to hold the weight of their meeting. Tunde rose to his feet and extended his hand to her. For a long moment, Halima stared at it, unsure if she should take it. No one had ever offered her a hand like this before. Finally, she placed her hand in his. The children gasped softly, as if they too felt something powerful happening. Tunde looked at her with respect, not pity. And in that moment, Halima understood, this man did not see her as a beggar. He saw her as the girl who had taught him a lesson no book, no money, no luxury could ever teach. And with that, the revelation was complete, not just of who Tunde was, but of who Halima had always been, a light in the dark, a gift the world had ignored, until fate placed her in the path of a man who needed saving in more ways than one. Chief Tunde kept his word. The very next day, he brought Halima and the younger children into his home. For the first time in her life, Halima slept on a soft bed, under a roof that did not leak when it rained. She was given clean clothes and warm food, but more than that, she was given respect. The workers in the house bowed their heads when they greeted her. At first, she felt strange, almost out of place. She was used to people turning their faces away, or calling her names. Now, she was treated with honor, and she did not know how to respond. Chief Tunde told her, "This is your home now. You are no longer a child of the streets. You are part of my family." Halima's heart swelled with emotion. 4 years she had carried pain, but in that moment she felt her burden lift. The children who used to share the broken shelter with her were also placed in safe homes. They too went to school, their faces bright with new hope. Tunde went further. He called a meeting with his business partners, his family members, and leaders of the city. He stood tall before them and said, "This girl, Halima, saved my life. She showed me that kindness is greater than money. From today, I will use my wealth to help children like her, children who sleep on the streets and are forgotten." The hall was silent at first. Many of the wealthy people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They were not used to hearing such words. But slowly, they began to clap. Some even stood to their feet. They knew Tunde was a man of power, and if he could change his heart, perhaps they too should think differently. The very next week, Chief Tunde started a foundation. It was called Halima's Light. It gave food, clothing, and a safe place to homeless children. Schools were built, and teachers were hired to guide them. The streets that were once filled with crying and hunger began to echo with the sound of laughter and learning. Halima went to school with Amora, Tunde's niece, who welcomed her with open arms. Though she was shy at first, Halima soon grew in confidence. She loved reading books, solving problems, and telling stories to the other children. The teachers were amazed at how fast she learned. This girl, they said, was always meant to shine. But even as she sat in classrooms and wore neat uniforms, Halima never forgot the days she had gone hungry, or the children who had held her hands under the broken shelter. Whenever she saw a new homeless child brought into the foundation, she would sit with them and tell them, "I was once like you. Do not give up. You are not forgotten." Her words gave courage to many. Chief Tunde often watched her from a distance. Pride filled his heart, not the pride of money, but the pride of a father who saw his daughter becoming strong and wise. He remembered the first day he saw her, dusty and tired, pouring water on his lips while he lay helpless on the road. That memory never left him. It became a reminder of how fragile life was, and how kindness could come from the least expected hands. Years passed. Halima grew into a beautiful young woman, respected by all. She was not just a student but a leader. She organized groups to visit street children, to give them food and comfort. She worked beside Chief Tunde in running the foundation, her voice always gentle but firm. People began to say, "This is the girl who saved a billionaire's life." But more than that, she is the one who saved our city from forgetting kindness. Tunde's businesses grew even stronger, but he no longer counted his wealth in gold or houses. His wealth was measured in the number of children who smiled because of Halima's light. He often said at public gatherings, "Money can build walls, but kindness builds bridges. Without kindness, wealth is empty." Halima never boasted about her past. Whenever people praised her, she would simply say, "I only did what anyone should do. When you see a person in need, you help." Yet her story spread across towns and villages, inspiring others to open their hearts. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Halima stood at the gates of the foundation and watched children playing. Their laughter filled the air. Chief Tunde walked up beside her. "Do you see this?" he asked, his voice soft. "Yes," she said with a smile. "This is what true wealth looks like." Tunde nodded. He had built skyscrapers, owned land, and signed great deals, but none of those moments compared to standing beside Halima, watching the light she had brought into the world. The city never forgot the lesson. People whispered it in markets, schools, and homes. True wealth is not in money, but in kindness. It became a saying that parents taught their children, and children carried in their hearts. Halima's name lived on as a symbol of hope. She was no longer the homeless girl people avoided. She was the woman who turned pain into power, sorrow into strength, and poverty into light. And so the story of a homeless girl and a billionaire became more than a tale, it became a truth that shaped an entire city.